At the end of the day, Star Wars is about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker when you boil it down to its core. A character change that has a profound impact on the galaxy on an unprecedented level. It's pretty much a guarantee that anyone watching this knows the basic story of how it happened. But as with everything in the Star Wars universe, the redemption of Anakin Skywalker was deeper than the story told in Return of the Jedi. There were many factors that contributed to its occurrence, and among them was his continued relationships with clones.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Though there are, and probably always will be those that believe that Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader were two different personalities with a stark line between them, this wasn't the case. Anakin Skywalker's original personality wasn't submerged in the back of his mind during his time as Darth Vader, it was Vader in totality. Darth Vader was simply the evolution, so to speak, of Anakin Skywalker, a collection of personality changes that were the result of Skywalker's life experiences. But Anakin's fall to the dark side wasn't a complete personality overhaul. A number of aspects of his original heroic self remained as part of Darth Vader, and Skywalker's redemption was possible because of this. There were myriad occasions on which these aspects of Vader came to the surface, usually in response to artifacts of his time as Skywalker, be they actual items, locations, or people, showing that part of the hero with no fear was still intact within the Darth Lord. These elements of Anakin Skywalker's personality, as well as his sense of justice and love for those he cared about, were the good that remained in him after his fall. Good that Luke Skywalker tapped into to redeem his father. The surfacing of those aspects of Skywalker and Force completely broke the dark side's grip on him due to the nature of the dark side itself. In becoming Darth Vader, he hadn't just fallen to the dark side, he had submerged himself in it, descending so deep into darkness that he was cut off from the light. Or so he thought. After all, that's the nature of becoming a Sith. That separation from the light, that complete submersion, is what differentiates them from other Darksiders. The dark side of the Force is not intrinsically evil. Using it is simply using one's emotions to bend the Force to one's will, using it for one's own purposes instead of allowing one to be used by it. As displayed by the Revankists during the Mandalorian Wars, this isn't necessarily evil, especially if one's purposes are good. But it does lead more easily to evil, as more often than not, it contradicts the will of the Force and puts one's own will first and foremost. Anakin Skywalker's journey to becoming Vader began here, as he bent the Force to his will using his rage unconsciously on many occasions. According to the Sith code, power was merely a stepping stone to be used to gain first victory and then freedom. This wasn't evil of him, at least not at first, but it did open him up to the ways of the Sith. To be a Lord of the Sith was to use the dark side almost purely for self-gain, usually as a means of obtaining power. According to the Sith code, power was merely a stepping stone to be used to gain first victory and then freedom. But for nearly all Sith, it ended up becoming a goal in itself, leading to the deep evil seen in most of them. It was less of a change in use of the Force and more of a change in motive. While some Darksiders might have been motivated by righteous causes to use the dark side, Sith are motivated purely by selfishness. For this to be possible, a Force user must use emotion as the basis of their power and then kill that which emotionally grounds them in the universe. The Sith ritualized this. The key requirement for becoming a Sith Lord was to kill the being with which the individual is closest, eliminating any sort of redeemable motive within them in theory. Darth Sidious fulfilled this when he slaughtered his family, Darth Tyrannus fulfilled this when he killed Cypher Dyas, and Darth Vader fulfilled this when he killed Padme. In most cases, this resulted in complete submersion in the dark side of the Force, as the only motives for bending the Force that remained were all self-centered. The reason Darth Vader was ultimately redeemed was because this wasn't truly the case, though he and everyone else believed it to be for over 2 decades. Ironically, Anakin Skywalker's journey down the dark path was driven by love and by his sense of justice, both of which Darth Sidious twisted into nearly unrecognizable forms. Sidious's intent was for Skywalker's experiences during his fall to turn both of these drives into self-interested ones, and after Vader's reconstruction following his defeat on Mustafar, it appeared to Sidious that he succeeded, but he hadn't, or at least not completely. While Darth Vader's motivations were selfish, he did justify the supremacy of the Empire and many of his own actions with his sense of justice. While this sense of justice was perverted and mainly used as an excuse for committing atrocities, the core of what it had once been was still present. At the end of the day, Darth Vader did believe in justice, though it wouldn't surface until the very end. Furthermore, his love, or rather his caring to some degree for others, persisted as well, which was why Vader was able to be redeemed, and it's also where clones tie into all of this. Anakin Skywalker bonded with many people over the course of his life, from his mother to his friends in the Jedi Order to the men under his command during the Clone Wars. He truly, genuinely cared for these people, and he was primarily driven by the fear of losing those that he cared about the most. His fall to the dark side brought many of these relationships to ruination and damaged those that survived in the process, which weren't many to begin with. With the Jedi, his mother, and his wife all gone, Sidious was under the impression that the only bond Vader had left was the bond with him, which he hard perverted into the bond between a Sith Master and his apprentice. Vader's bonds with the clones under his command also survived. During the Clone Wars, Anakin Skywalker had a close relationship with many of the clones under his command, holding them all in high regard and caring deeply about their welfare. His change in worldview with his transformation to Darth Vader destroyed many such relationships, but those with the clones remained intact, as they remained on the same side in the same roles. Though Vader was less open about it than he had been as a Jedi, he still cared about his clone subordinates and still respected them significantly, a feeling that was mutual. A normal being in the position of such clones might have alienated Vader through fear or intentional distance, as most recruited stormtroopers didn't even bother to conceal their fear and mild dislike for the man. Clones, however, didn't feel the same way. As revealed in the novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, clones actually respected Vader more than they had most Jedi, as they admired his clone-like efficiency and the fact that he wore armor despite having force powers. As few clones had full knowledge of the extent of Vader's injuries, they saw his use of armor as a degree of humility, as they had seen the fact that most Jedi didn't wear armor as a sort of arrogant belief that some all-powerful force would protect them. Just as the armor dehumanized Vader in the eyes of most people, it actually humanized him in a way for the clones, resulting in an increased level of respect and perceived relatability. This allowed Vader's relationships with the clones to endure. While Vader would never have admitted it, he bore a degree of love for those clones with which he was closest, which on some level slipped through on several occasions. As we've discussed in an earlier video, he was consumed by anger at the death of Contrail, a former clone pilot with whom he served during the Clone Wars, a reaction that's almost unbecoming of a Sith. Even more unbecoming was the open sadness he expressed after the death of Commander Appo on Kashyyyk and with other commanders of the 501st Legion on other occasions. Even the clones with which Vader wasn't closely bonded had a role in this. The very existence of the clones reminded Vader of his time as a Jedi, and unlike many other memories, like those of his master or even his homeworld, these memories were untainted by his fall due to the unique circumstances we discussed above. They were artifacts from his past. Artifacts that reminded him of sentiments and motivations that he had as a Jedi, even if they didn't stir up in him. Clones connected Vader to the hero that he used to be. The relationships Vader continued to share with clones, together with a few other aspects of his personality, formed a lifeline of sorts for him. Vader may have been completely submerged in the darkness, but he wasn't cut off from the light. These aspects of Anakin Skywalker that had survived Operation Nightfall, that had survived Mustafar, tied him to the light still. Because this connection existed, Luke Skywalker was able to pull his father back from out of the darkness, redeeming him at the very end of his life. By extension, for the record, this means that the clone troopers of the Grand Army of the Republic were in part responsible for the salvation of the entire galaxy. And because of his redemption, the balance of power in the galaxy was irreversibly shifted back toward the light. In Legends, never again was the dark at such an advantage over the light than it had been during the Dark Times. The legacy of Skywalker's sacrifice. So there you have it, and who would have guessed it? Clones were partially responsible for the death of the Sith. But what do you think? Do you think we're spot on here, or have we shot right past the point? Feel free to post your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. And just before I go, guys, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Their names will show up on screen now, and I just want to give them a big thank you because they increase the quality of our work, and I hope you guys have noticed that in previous months. And if you're into history, make sure you check out my history channel in the description below, as well as our Geetsly's gaming network and all of our Discord links to talk with other Star Wars fans and play games with other Star Wars fans. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.